and roast potatoes and roast sweet potatoes. First thing to do is to peel your potato. We are then going to parboil them for 5 minutes in water. This helps to slightly cook the outside of the potato and then it makes the potato more crispy when we then put it in the oil. So you want to cut your potatoes so they're all the same size. So I'm going to cut this potato in half and then put it in one of the other potatoes I've already prepared in a saucepan of water. Put the lid back on there because we're going to take that over to the stove in a minute. Next, sweet potato. Sweet potatoes are excellent because they actually count as part of your 5 a day because they are ordinary potatoes are from the nightshade family and these sweet potatoes are from a different family group and actually classify as a root vegetable. So again, I'm going to cut this in half. I've put them in 2 different saucepans because the sweet potato actually don't need quite as long as the normal potatoes, but you could bring the normal potatoes up to the boil and then add your sweet potatoes on top. That way they would cook slightly less. So we have an Aga here. You obviously won't have one of those in your student accommodation, but so you'd put them on your hob and bring them up to the boil. I'm going to put them on my Aga now. So we'll leave those to come up to the boil and then come back to those in 5 minutes or so time. So the other thing you need to do is to put your oil that you're going to roast your potatoes into the oven to heat up. You need to preheat your oven to 220 degrees C. Okay, or if you're lucky enough to have an Aga at home, using the top right roasting oven. So I'm going to drizzle some oil into my roasting pan for my potatoes and put that in the oven to preheat. I'm using rapeseed oil because that's really healthy. It has a high smoking point, but you can use sunflower oil, soy oil, or even olive oil. But I find that this is the best one for nice, crispy, healthy potatoes. So I'm going to put this into my top of my oven to get nice and hot. And whilst that's getting hot, I can move on to preparing the chicken. I bought 2 chickens. They cost £6.52 for 2. Obviously you'd only be buying 1 chicken, but I want to show you later what to do with leftover chickens, and we're a family of 4. 1 average sized chicken should serve 4 people, so this will mean that we will have leftovers to show you what to do with cold chicken other than making a sandwich. So hopefully you'll find that useful. So you take them out of the packet, obviously being very careful where you put the chicken, because obviously chicken potentially have salmonella and other bacteria that you don't want to cross-contaminate your kitchen with. Now you'll notice that these chickens have like a stringy, elasticy stringy bit on them, and you want to remove that before you cook your chickens, because it actually, if you see on this one, the chicken is all tight and close together and the heat can't get in there to cook the chicken properly, and it's round it's the thighs that take the longest to cook. So by opening them up, that helps with the cooking time and cooking them completely through. So I've removed the string and then the chicken is sat happily in the roasting tin. And I'm now going to prepare some veg to go around the chicken to roast it with to make delicious gravy. So I've peeled this carrot, and I've kept the carrot peelings, and I'm going to put those around the outside of the chicken, and they will roast. I've used the tops of the carrots. So the key is to use as everything possible to make maximum flavour at the lowest possible cost. So I've got an onion here. You would only need half an onion if you were doing one chicken, and I'm going to cut the end off it and then cut the other end off it. This now gives me a nice stable end to put the onion on and then cut through in half. I can then take the outer layer off and then pop it around the outside of the chicken. I can hear that my potatoes have just come up to the boil, so I will quickly chop that bit off there and put those round the outside of the chicken. Right, now we'll go back to the potatoes. They've now come up to the boil and boiling away happily there, so I'm going to turn them down if you were on a conventional stove, or move them to a cooler hot plate, obviously on my Aga. So those are just, I'm just going to put the lid sort of half off them so they can just boil gently away for a couple of minutes. So we've got the chicken ready to go in the oven. We've got the carrot that we've peeled that we're going to just cut into batons, ready to serve with the chicken later. So having your fingers on top of the knife, you're going to just cut through the carrot and then place it cut side on your chopping board. So it's nice and stable, and then cut it in half. If it was a bigger carrot, you might not want to, you might want to cut it into 3, and then cut it in half, and then you can use that later on to serve with your chicken. Potatoes are ready, so I'm going to drain them into a colander and then slightly rough them up to give them a rough, because it increases the surface area, which helps to make them crispy. Sweet potatoes are never quite as crispy as normal potatoes. So those are ready. I'm now going to get the normal potatoes, which have just taken a little bit longer to do, and I'm going to drain those, but I'm going to drain them into a measuring jug and retain the water and all the vitamins that are in the water to use in making the gravy. So, and this is coming back to the don't waste anything. And again, I don't know whether you can see that the potatoes have started to cook on the outside, and then we're roughing that up to increase the surface area. If you can see that they've just sort of gone slightly fluffy on the outside. So just leave those to steam for a minute so that they're really dry on the outside, because that'll make them nice and crispy. So at this point, we're then going to put the chicken in the oven and take the tray that's preheating in the oven out to cook the potatoes. So a roast chicken needs to be cooked at 200 degrees C and the potatoes at 220. So if you heat your oven to 220 and cook your roast potatoes in the top of the oven and then your chicken in the bottom of the oven, you should get the right heat distribution. So I'm just putting my chickens into the bottom and then going to get my hot oil out from the top. And then put my potatoes into the oil. And I'm cooking the sweet potatoes on one side of the tray and the ordinary potatoes on the other side. It just because the sweet potatoes won't be crispy in the same way as the normal potatoes, and it just stops the normal potatoes going sort of soft and keeps them crispier. So I'm just tossing the potatoes in the oil so they're all completely covered in the oil. You don't want to drown them in the oil because that's a waste of oil, which is a waste of your money if it's not needed, and also it doesn't actually make them any more crispy. So minimal amount of oil just to coat them completely is sufficient. So these are all now coated in the oil, I think. And now to coat the sweet potatoes. And then I will put them back in the top of the oven. They will take an hour to cook, as will the roast chicken. If you have a really large roasted chicken, it may take longer than an hour. But most average sized chickens, even a small chicken, will take a minimum of an hour. And I'll show you how you tell whether it's cooked or not in a little bit. So these are going into the oven for an hour. But we'll turn them after 20 minutes and then a further 20 minutes after that, and you should get lovely crisp potatoes. The roast chicken we probably won't look at until we're getting to maybe 50 minutes to an hour in. I'll probably have a look at it about 50 minutes so I can show you what a chicken looks like when it's not quite ready. Right, so these are going in the oven above the chicken on the top shelf as high as possible so they get the highest heat possible. Okay, so we don't have to do any more with the roast chicken for 20 minutes, so you can prepare your veg. We're now going to turn the potatoes. So you can see that they're starting to brown. This is just having been in for 20 minutes. So we're going to turn them. So you can see some of them are starting to get crispy on the bottoms. Turn them so they've got different sides in contact with the oil. The sweet potatoes, and then we're going to put them back in the oven. And then at this point you can also check your chickens because a lot of your ovens in your student accommodation may not be as good as my oven and your parents' ovens at home, and you may find that your chicken is cooking unevenly. It's cooking better one side than the other, and so you may want to turn it in the oven to make sure you get a more even cook. So I'm just going to pop these back in the oven on the top shelf again. A little peek at the chickens, and mine are cooking evenly. If you have a look, you can see that the juices in the chicken are still running bloody, which means it's not cooked, and obviously the chicken's looking anemic on the top. But they've only had 20 minutes, so they've had way less than half their cooking time. So this is what you'd expect at this stage. All the vegetables are in the pan together. The hardest vegetables went in first, and then the softer vegetables in later. I will drain these, and you have to remember that once they're drained and they're sat in your saucepan, they will continue to cook. And nobody likes overcooked, stodgy vegetables. The chickens out of the oven, which are nicely browned, and just see whether they're cooked. So I'm just going to tip, and the juices will run clear. So as you see, there are all these lovely dark juices in the pan, having taken the chicken out. This is what you're going to make your gravy with. So you're going to sprinkle a little bit of flour over the juices to absorb any fat that there might be. And then you're going to brown the flour. I need a slightly higher heat, so I'll just push it onto the hot plate. So you're going to let this bubble and slightly cook the flour, and then you'll use your retained vegetable water to add to this to make a delicious, nutritious gravy without the use of any gravy granules. So we're now ready to add the retained vegetable water. So I'm just going to put half in to start off with. I might not need all the water I've retained, but it's good to have. It's not cost you anything. It would only otherwise go down the sink, so you might as well use it. So we're going to mix in all the nice caramelized juices and bring this up to the boil, and then it can just bubble away whilst we assemble all the other the vegetables together, and then ready to serve. So you see the nice dark colour that we've got on the gravy from all the caramelized juices. So the gravy is now bubbling away. It's taking on any nice brown rich colour from the bits of vegetables that you cooked around the chicken, and it's got all the juices and essences from the chicken, and is now a lovely deep brown colour. So I'm now going to take it off the heat and strain it, ready for serving. So there's your roast chicken, roast potatoes, sweet potatoes, vegetables, and your lovely rich gravy, ready to carving and sharing with your flatmates, or just tucking into yourself and reheating the leftovers